Hello and welcome to Fox in the Box here with Fox Electronica. How are you doing today? Well, I got something neat for you guys. I have a special guest here in the box with me. She kind of didn't want to do it, and then she slapped me when I grabbed her hand. I had to drag her in here. It was pretty crazy. I'm still picking out all the needles, but let me go ahead and introduce her. This is Cactus Electronica. Go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
See, don't trust that. She's mean. So, um, as everyone knows, this is the month of love, and I thought, who else better to share the month of love with than someone I love? So today we're going to talk about a show that we both like, and it's called Golden Boy. And have I got a show for you guys to listen to? But before we get into that, and before we even get into the history of what is Golden Boy, I do want to give a shout out to the winner of last week's trivia. Yeah, they're going to be contacted after the show. But for those who have been paying attention, I want to say that the answer to the trivia is Ranma half and half. So listener, those of you who, the listener that called in, thank you very much. I'll get in contact with you after the show, and we'll talk about prize details later. Now, for those listening right now, I do want to say, keep your eyes peeled and your ears open. See if you can catch the trivia question of this week's show. So, first of all, we're going to talk about a neat little anime called Golden Boy, and it ran from late '95 to about mid '96. And if that means this anime is older than you, then welcome to the club because most of my listeners are younger than this show. So, a brief little synopsis is that we have this main guy. His name is Kentaro Oe, and he is a specialist in part time work, riding all over the highways and byways of Japan on his trusty steed, the Mikazuki 5. Which, folks, it's just a really cool bicycle, but we'll get to that later. And finding employment wherever he can. His adventures bring him knowledge and experience that can't be taught in a classroom, from political corruption to the delicacy of a young woman's heart. With nothing but the open road before him, and not to mention the many beautiful women along the way, Kentaro pushes his spirit of education while attempting to hold down his various odd jobs. However, undignified they may be. As he learns from each task he takes on, who knows what could happen? He might even be able to save the world one day. One thing is for sure, though, this will be all very educational. All right, so before we start talking about the individual episodes, because this is only 6 episodes long, and for you anime heads out there, if you're curious by the end of this episode, go look it up on Amazon. You could pick the whole series up for $20. And no, I'm not endorsed, but Amazon, if you're listening, I will whore out as many titles as you want me to. So, like I said, before we get to talking about the episodes, I want to just take a moment and say, when I got introduced to the show, it was, oh gosh, it had to have been like the late '90s, possibly very, very early 2000s. Back when you would have the $35 VHS tapes that were just like 3 episodes of tape, and that was it. Um, those were the sucky days. It was like the Wild West. There were no rules, and everything was insane. To the point where these VHSs only had one episode and were almost $40. Could you imagine that crap? That's like over $200. It's just 6 episodes. It's insane. But that's how I was introduced to the show. I picked up the last episode for $20, and I had no idea what I had gotten myself into, and I'm glad that I did. But ever since then, I've been trying to show friends and family alike. I was like, guys, you gotta check this out. It's a great show. And when I finally picked it up on DVD, I would rather have paid $20 instead of 200, especially with DVD sharpening over VHS tape. You can't compare it. You really can't. But with that being said, let me ask you, Cactus, how did you come across this show?
You know the answer to that. You showed it to me.
I know, but they don't know the answer.
Well, yeah, you showed me the anime. Although, I had seen clips of it. Where I actually first I think ran across it was probably AMV Hell. Though I didn't know what I was seeing at the time. In a couple of AMV Hell segments were clips from this show, and it was funny, and I didn't know what I was seeing, but but now that I've seen the whole thing, it's like, oh, it's that anime.
Yeah, very much so. So, what we're going to do, since this is the month of love, we're going to go episode per episode because, face it, folks, this is a 2 hour show. And if it's only 6 episodes, you got us for the whole series. And for those who are wondering about spoilers, too freaking bad. Came out in the 90s. You've had time. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump into episode 1. So, um, the way this is going to work is we're going to talk about, or I'm basically going to kind of run through the episode, like the plot and all that. And here and there, we're just going to comment on bits and pieces of the show as we go. And then once we're done, we're just going to go to the next episode. So, Golden Boy, episode 1. Kentaro starts the episode by getting hit on his bike by a car. And the driver of the car is none other than this tall, hot blonde in a skimpy skin paint of clothing. Like, it looked like it was literally, peeled off of a fruit by the foot and just slapped to her. That leaves nothing to the imagination. And so yeah, she steps out of her Porsche, and upon seeing her, he shoots straight up out of the garbage that he flew in. Like, as soon as he hits the ground, he tumbles, and it's like, oh man, this guy's gonna need some sort of medical attention. But no, not when you see a hot lady. That just goes right out the window. And so yeah, he just shoots straight out of the garbage with the power of boner. And just to kind of avoid any troubles, she gives him $10,000 and speeds off. And yeah, so he's just kind of sitting there covered in garbage, and he's like, I have $10,000. Holy crap. And at any point, you can jump in and say what you want to.
Okay, because like I think some of my notes from the first parts of this episode is like there's I think it opens with these like random schoolgirls talking, and they're using like I don't know what directorial decision led to this, but they both have super thick Valley Girl accents, and it's the only time it shows up in any of the episodes. It's just these two girls, so it's kind of jarring. I was like, wait, why? Um, yeah, and so then he gets in between. What I thought was funny was in between him getting hit with the car and popping up in the garbage, is that like he just tumbles ass over tea kettle into the garbage, and as soon as that happens, he's even like wah, and right then it cuts to the opening credits, which is basically just this shot, like a few shots of him just looking very badass and getting on his bike and just riding. But yeah, so he just tumbles into the garbage, and then it cuts to this really badass looking shot of his face, and it made me laugh at least because it's just and a lot of the episodes do that where he looks kind of dumb, and then it keeps going. But yeah, about that nothing to the imagination episode outfit. Oh my. Um yeah, I remember thinking, I don't know what she does, but I can't imagine it being work appropriate really anywhere outside of a certain couple of professions.
Yeah, without a doubt, because for those who are not going to go watch the show after this episode, basically think of Mystique from the X-Men, but color her red, and that's what you got. That's who this girl is. So anyway, after watching, her speed off and everything, he takes his bike to a little bike shop, and the old man there fixes up his bike because it was just a little bent, it wasn't really broken. And so he's like, cool. So he goes off on his way. But then these Yakuza show up and start giving the old man some trouble because he had to borrow money to keep his business afloat. And wouldn't you know it, the Yakuza are like, you owe us 10 grand, man. You owe us 10 grand. You better start paying up. And so here comes Kentaro, hero of the year, walking straight at them with the most serious, face you could imagine. And the Yakuza, they look up and they're like, oh, who's this guy, And the camera cuts back over to Kentaro, and he's defiantly walking right toward the Yakuza. And this is going to be some sort of crazy Fist of the North Star action sequence, and the music starts getting tense, and all of a sudden, Kentaro turns left and walks to the alley beside the shop. He disappears. And so yeah, if that didn't make you laugh, you're not gonna laugh at the rest of this show. So yeah. So he hears the Yakuza, give these guys trouble and stuff, but that's all we see of that section, So after that, we kind of catch back up to Kentaro, and he goes to his new job. Now, immediately, he notices that the office is just filled with hot ladies, and like he smells their perfume, and I think at one point he's like, "Spring is in the air," and while he's going through the office, seeing everything, he gets met eye level to, I guess, nipple level with a very familiar pair of breasts, and he kind of looks up, and the boss lady is the lady who ran him over at the very beginning of the episode. And once their eyes meet, it's toilet duty for Kentaro.
It's like, also worth noting is that she, and only she, has DOA physics on her boobs. No other women in the show do. Even ones that are large. It's just her. They never stop moving. It's kind of mesmerizing and also very weird because they don't move correctly.
Yeah, it's like, what if you took those little metal balls that go clack a clack a clack a clack, and then just tell gravity to screw off, and what would happen? That's these boobs, So I'm gonna have to speed this review of episode 1 along, but basically, yeah, it's toilet duty, and while he's cleaning, he starts like fetishizing. I guess that's the word. The boss lady, like, on the toilet, and he's like, "Oh my god, the toilet's still warm," and all this, and then he gets caught. Go ahead.
This is also a running theme in the show. It's worth noting that if this is something that it just, like, this is kind of right on the line for me. But if it's something that really grosses you out, it's a running theme. It happens in several episodes. Just, it's worth noting.
Yeah, it's a little bit of toilet humor. But so yeah, he gets caught like rubbing his face on the toilet seat, and he's just like, "Oh, she put her bottom here. Oh my god," And so yeah, that didn't end up too well. And so she's basically like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to not do that." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And so while he's talking to the rest of the office ladies, they're kind of like showing him basically like the little tech skills, like, "Oh, this is how you do this is how you do that," and the whole time he's writing in his little journal, like learning all these little technology coding tips, and generally having fun. But then something happens, and it's a very, very possible, I guess you'd say, thing to have happen. Because basically what happens is he's in the locker room, and he's basically like cleaning windows, mopping, all that good stuff. But while he's in there, he stumbles upon a black bra, and he's like, "Ooh, this is educational." And so, just being a guy, he like puts the bra on. He's like, "Oh, that's how this works," And at that moment, that's when the office ladies start coming in at the end of their day, and he's like, I've got to hide. Because he's wearing one of their bras, man. You don't want to get caught like that. So he hides in the locker that's like right behind him. And the whole time he's like freaking out. He's like, don't get caught. Please don't open the door. But at the same time, he's kind of pervy. Month of love, folks. Month of love. He's kind of pervy, and so he's watching the girls like undress and get their going out clothes on and stuff, and he's just like, oh. But at the same time, he's trying really hard not to make a noise and get caught. So finally, the girls leave, and he's like, time to go. And he steps out, and the entire office is basically, shut down and dark and empty until he sees something at the corner of his eye. There's like this one computer that was left on, and he was like, "Oh, well, somebody was just careless then. I'll just, unplug this here, turn this off, and everything will be fine, and then I'll be, praised for saving the electricity to the office, and everybody will be happy with me."
Except that it was their backup server, so, no, not so much.
Yeah, and what he did was he ended up wiping out the entire office's like coding project. Like they were making basically a user-friendly OS for everybody, and he goes and wipes out their entire progress. And when that happens, the boss lady sees him again, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was going on," because she pops him in the mouth and everything, because he basically ruined however many months of their life has been leading up to this. And he's like, "Well, didn't you make notes? I keep notes in my book all the time." And she grabs it and tears the book apart, and she's like, "Forget your stupid notebook and all this and that." And he's like, "You don't understand. This notebook is my life." He's like, "There's precious amounts of knowledge in here." And he holds it up, and it's a two spread page of very sexy notes that he's made about the boss lady. And he's just like, ah, shit. And that leads to him getting his ass whooped a little bit more, because I think rightfully so. And with that, she kicks him out of the office, and that's it for him. And you would think that's the end of the episode, but um, as like she's trying to figure out what to do next, um, let's see. It's like the next morning, I think it is. He drops off, a little floppy disk, because back then you could like change the world with a single floppy disk. But he drops off a floppy disk, and it's filled with a program, and it turns out that he worked all night long and somehow with some computer, like created this OS system that not only fit on a single floppy disk, but was like even better than what the ladies were making. And these ladies had gone to like, school, and has been doing this for months and months and months. So he kind of like OC characters, OC's his way out of this. He's like the best Mary Sue you'd ever seen. And with that, the ladies are like, "Oh, we got to find him. We got to bring him back." And so as they run out of the building to stop him from disappearing, basically, um, the old couple, you guys remember them? They show up, and they're like, "Hey, we wanted to thank Kentaro. We know that he works here. He gave us $10,000 to bail us out from the Yakuza, and we just wanted to say thank you." And so that makes the boss lady just, "Oh my god, he's such a great guy. We have to find him."
Cause like when she fires him, she mentions the 10,000 that she gave him, and he's like, "Oh, I already spent that." And this blink and you miss it kind of reel of just him with like beer and hookers just kind of rolls by, and it's really fast, but it's just her imagination of what he spent the money on, and turns out no, he actually helped out a nice couple with it.
Right. And so with the boss lady like, "Oh my god, this guy, he was so great. We have to find him." And then the episode ends. So that was episode 1. And we're doing good for time, so do you have
Yeah.
anything to add about episode 1?
Now that you mention it, it is like, no, Kintaro very much, and this is again running theme through the show. He is 100% a Mary Sue of a character, because he has all of the traits of a Mary Sue. Um, but it's still a fun show, and I do enjoy it. But interestingly enough, it's like I put in my notes, because there's a point where he's kind of playing up how much he knows about computers and that he's studied all about computers. And I work in tech support, and I put in my notes, yep, I've had customers like this, because there's a point where they just are like, okay, cool, show us what you know. And he sits down at a computer and he knows nothing. And that's how he ends up on janitorial duty in the building, because he doesn't know anything at all, really. Um, and I deal with these people all the time. We're like, I know everything there is to know. Don't tell me anything about these computers. And then they don't know. They think they know, but they don't. So very true to life in that regard.
Very much so. Now we're gonna move on to episode 2 here, and I'm just like skipping over when we go to basically the opening shots and the closing shots, like the intros and closings. There's no point, fellas. Y'all are gonna go watch this, but at the very beginning of episode 2, there's like an immediate panty shot, of this quote unquote angel schoolgirl that's on like the second floor of this mansion that Kentaro's just kind of standing in. And he's just like, I think I have seen an angel, and then it kind of smash cuts to the opening credits. And before we get any further, I do want to say this is a slightly problematic episode.
Yeah, it's like all of the episodes kind of toe the line of, they're a little bit problematic, but not really offensive. This one kind of goes almost over that line. It's the not blah, sorry, babbling. It is, like he said, the most problematic episode of the six. Um,
Right, and that just kind of comes down to what happens here in the episode. So check this out. So he's like, shouting all this poetry in his head while he's like glaring at this jailbait hottie, just walk across the second floor of the mansion, and he's just like, he is so blown away by this little hottie toddy girl, but she's like in high school, so very don't touch, and he's like watching her so much that he's not turning his body, he's only turning his head. And it gets to the point where he's practically looking directly behind him when the lady that hired him to help out, with his current job, surprises him, and she's like, oh, hey, there you are. Hey, I just wanted to give you this wine to deliver. And at that point, he jumps so hard that his head is like directly backwards. Like he snaps his head backwards. And she's like, oh my God, are you okay? He's like, nope, nope, this is fine. This is how I deliver everything, And he just like backs up and grabs the wine and just runs out of the mansion. And when he finally stops, he's like out in the front yard or whatever. He puts down the box of wine and he grabs his head and cracks his neck back into place. And he's got the funniest face.
oh, the facial animations in this show, it is just it doesn't go full like chibi the way some older animes do, but his face will go very off model, and just it suddenly goes very loosely animated, and it's just
Hmm.
funny every time it happens, because they'll just draw two big circles and like this kind of mouth. It's great.
Right, and so one of the life lessons that he writes into his little notebook immediately is that the human head cannot turn 360 degrees, which is very true. But like, I thought we all knew that, you know. So um, his job is he's working on the mayor's team, and turns out that it's kind of a dirty election that's going on, and even the local yakuza works for the mayor, and so it's sort of really awkward for him because he tries to be a stand-up guy, but he's working for this, this crooked politician, so he's kind of at odds about that. And while this is going on, helping, because he makes notes that, like, at this time of year for the elections, cabbages suddenly have, yen notes folded in between the leaves, and, just various slightly dirty things like that are going on. But he works his way through the ranks and eventually is able to help clean the mayor's home just to see Naoko, which is the jailbait girl that we're talking about, while also working on the campaign. But in doing so, one of the Yakuza guys that are working on the campaign with him, they are very wise to what Kentaro's doing. So they just kind of buddy up to him and they give him a friendly little warning about her to basically stay away. So, that being said, you know, he's cleaning up in the mansion and all this, and he ends up coming across, yet again, a toilet. And, you know, toilet hijinks ensue, and he's just like, oh my god, my angel, this is her throne. Oh, this is amazing.
And then he gets caught.
He gets caught again. He gets caught every single time, folks. But he gets caught by the jailbait hottie. And she invites him to her room, uh, which is very, very awkward. But, like, in the whole time, he's, like, perverting his mind out in his head. But he doesn't say anything because, let's face it, jailbait. So, um, he's like just on the urge or on the very, very edge of, acting on all these crazy thoughts, but he's like, no, that's not the way to be. Don't do that. And so while they're in her room, she like gives him a towel to wash his, clean his hands and stuff because he was, cleaning the toilet and all that. But while that's happening, he realizes that Naoko is behind him and changing clothes. And he is silently freaking out. Like, he both cannot believe the situation and at the same time is like, oh my god, if I had the chance, oh my god.
Yeah, it's I think you were telling me afterwards that like this was the only time this the voice actor who plays Kentaro was in a lead role. And it's a shame because the dub on this anime is actually really, really good, which is saying something because it was from a time when anime dubs were very hit or miss. But oh my goodness, it's so funny. Because there is a point where she starts changing and he just, do you want me to leave?
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Mhm.
Just he manages to hit every note perfectly on all of these lines, and it's great. Um, but I think the biggest note that I had for this entire episode was I put in there, this is the kind of story that only dudes write, and what I mean by that is it's like because basically if you don't mind, I'm gonna kind of spoil ahead a little bit here. Um, she kind of for the next several scenes, she convinces him to start tutoring her, coming over to the house and sneaking in late at night, and just kind of coming on to him without really, but basically just doing it to manipulate him for a laugh. And I'm not saying that no woman ever, has behaved this way. It just whenever it seems to come up in fiction, I seem to notice it happens in a very specific way, and in a way that for me, as having been a teenage girl before, and being a woman now, I don't. It doesn't feel true to life, and other women probably know what I'm talking about. That it doesn't seem like there's any ulterior motive, like just manipulating him is the end goal, and I'm just going, eh, because usually when people try to use other people, they have some end goal in mind, um, and it doesn't seem like that's really like she's got any of that going on. It just, so it feels a little weird to me, um, and but at the same time, it's what happens in this episode, so we're gonna move on, and that's all that needs to be said about it.
Right, and basically what you could chalk that up to is the women who do usually manipulate and do things like this. They're usually grown, so they've got like a whole game plan in their head. This girl, she's just a spoiled high school girl who thinks that she knows what she's doing, thinks that she's grown up, and to her, it's all a game. So that's very problematic for her to even think that way. So again, it was the 90s. You probably wouldn't see a storyline like this nowadays, but at the same time, it's still a really good show, so you guys got to go check it out. So as we were saying though, like, yeah, he kind of becomes her toy basically, and she starts teasing him and flustering him, invites him to the room and to tutor, and teases while he scolds himself for perving, because rest assured he's not all like, oh, I'm gonna have me some hottie. Like the whole time he's like, oh my god, she's incredibly hot, but I can't, I'm not gonna do it. So really points on him also for not acting on that kind of thing, because let's be honest, we're all humans. We've all been around a person that are just like, oh, give me 1 second and they're not going to know what reality is. And at the same time, we've known better than to act on such impulses. So that's kind of a good on him. But that being said, with her like teasing and all this stuff, um, between the harsh like political campaign and Naoko, Kentaro is tired, man, and her teasing gets more and more intense until she eventually sneaks his notebook, and turns out he was onto her game all along.
Which I thought that's a cool twist, that that he knew from the beginning that that she was playing him, but oh, it pisses her off.
Yeah, and so much so, and basically the last few scenes of the episode is Mayor Katsuda, the crooked politician guy. He does end up winning, and the whole time while everyone's having a party about the winning of the political thing, um, Kentaro is searching for his notebook, and he's just like, he's got to find it, and he's even looking in Naoko's dressing or in her bedroom, because that was like one of the last places he saw it. And while he's doing that, she's, taking scissors and she's cutting very strategically like parts of her clothes, and you know, at first you're like, what the hell's up with this? And she hands him the scissors, and then she screams like she's getting attacked, and immediately, Daddy Katsuda comes in, with a whole bunch of mob guys, and he's like, "Oh my god, what are you doing with my daughter?" And she's like, "Oh, he attacked me," and stuff like that. And, seeing straight through her game, Kintaro grabs her, pulls her in, and just plants one on her. And, he's like, "I have an announcement. We're in love." And the gang members beat the crap out of him until Naoko, kind of realizes, hey, this is kind of a real thing. I could really get people hurt with this. And so she stops and she admits everything's her fault, and that's kind of the end of that. But that being said, the mayor kind of admires Kentaro's spirit there. Like, that's a pretty ballsy guy. So he's like, look, we're going to escort you out of town. Don't come back for a couple years. But you're cool, guy. You're cool. And that's kind of the end of the second episode.
Mm-hmm.
And that being said, we are about we're a little halfway through the first hour. So that being what's going on here, I'm just going to go ahead and drop that we are the Fox in the Box show here on All Fur Radio. You can also find us on Facebook. You can find us on really anywhere that All Fur Radio is located, but we're mostly on Facebook and Discord. You can find the All Fur Radio Discord. Go ahead, log on if you want to say something to me, if you want to complain to me, or suggestions about shows or whatever. go ahead and hunt me down. Fox Electronica, let's go. Let's see what we got. That being said, though, let's go ahead and jump into the third episode. And this is a really cool episode. So, the first episode was kind of, you know, him being kind of pervy. So, that's how that relates to the month of love. The second episode was him sort of being pervy, but being onto her little sex game, you know. So, I guess you could call that the connection to the month of love. But this episode, for our guy listeners out there, you all know what I'm talking about when I say the big brother syndrome, So this is a different kind of love. This is like a protector kind of love. So here we go.
And this is probably, I think I put in the notes because I've seen it before, we watched it for the show. This is probably my favorite episode. I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I do think this is probably the best episode of the six. It's just, it hits all the right notes. It's so sweet and it's so fun. It's funny where it needs to be. It's serious where it needs to be, and it's just, it's a little less wacky, but
it's got so much heart.
Yeah, it's such a good episode.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and jump right on in. So Kentaro is learning noodles. Yeah, he's making noodles like udon noodles and ramen noodles. And yeah, how cool is that? I want to learn how to do that someday. But he gets guff from the regulars that come and eat there because it's a little mom and pop store. It's a family that's been doing this for years. So, of course, the guys that come there all the time are like, "Hey, what's wrong with these noodles? They're all pasty and stuff like that." And so they're just like, "Oh, just be nice to him. He's new. He's got a lot to learn, but he's going to be okay." Now, the reason why he's at this noodle shop, though, is that the owner, the dad, has actually gotten hurt from a car accident, and he hired Kentaro to help around. That being said, Kentaro and the Noodle family, basically, they have fun, and they're bonding in the kitchen, and it's all great. Until Mr. Kagure, a real skeevy business guy. Like the second you see him, you can only smell like that really nose tearing Axe spray and like that obnoxious hair gel. You know the one, and you just, oh god! As soon as you see him, you want to punch him right in the face.
It's funny. I put that in my notes too. It was like, business guy is instantly a douche. Just you look at him and you're like, oh god, you're gonna be insufferable.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because anime does that. Well, okay, some of the better animes do that, where as soon as you see a character, you know exactly how you're gonna feel about that guy, and a picture's worth 1,000 words, but that guy's not worth a dime. So, but yeah, skeevy business guy. His name is Mr. Kagure, and he comes in for some noodles, And Kentaro notes how suspicious Mr. Kagure is, and Mr. Kagure invites the noodle shop family's daughter. Her name is Noriko. Invites her to a big business boat, and yeah, so that's not something that you just drop, because I mean, come on, how many people do you know walk into a Burger King and they're like, "Oh man, this is a fantastic burger. By the way, want to go hang out at my penthouse?" Who does that? Who does that, right? But at that moment, we realize, we as an audience are told that he was the one that set up the car accident to get the father hurt because he's got plans for this noodle shop, right? So he's like wooing and like seriously intimidating Noriko into marriage. And like I said, it turns out that he's staging everything from the marriage to then buying the building to a divorce, running out the family, and like turning it into a bar.
And like Kintaro hears all this just by accident, sort of. He's just walking through the street, going someplace, and he happens to see Mr. Kagure with, a much hotter lady on his arm, leaving a bar, and he's just like, wait a second, didn't he take Noriko out on a date? And so he follows them, and it's funny because like they're sitting in his car, and he's going over this whole plan, kind of Bond villain style, just telling his girlfriend everything that he's gonna do, and at that point, they kind of look out, or Kintaro just kind of knocks on the window, is like, could you please not do any of that? They're very nice people. It's like, it's so heartfelt and so innocent, and, of course, Mr. Kagure just kicks the crap out of him and is like, no, I will kill you if you tell them anything about this. And it's like, oh, because he's just like, no, they're really nice people. They don't deserve any of that. Please don't do that to them.
Exactly. And at this moment, this is where Kintaro gets like the that big brother syndrome, and he's like, no, I've got to do something. And funny enough, a friend of mine, she's got a show playing later on that I would like to be more or less a big brother to, because she's really cool. And when you're a broadcaster, and even when you're just a regular person, we all have a whole bunch of friends, and some of us are like, don't you dare, don't you dare, I'll knock you out, and it's not even a oh my god kind of thing. It's just kind of that's like your little brother or your little sister, or hell, sometimes even your big brother and big sister, and it's just kind of, don't you dare, sort of thing. That being said, though, Shiba's Flying Pickle Invasion is coming on Wednesday, which will be tomorrow, from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what she does is she plays some really cool music, kind of like techno, electric kind of stuff. And me being Fox Electronica, man, I was born into that kind of music. Like, I literally just copy pasted and shipped myself into reality from that music. So if you guys really want to hear something cool, give her show a listen. But with that, we're going to bounce right back into episode 3 of Golden Boy. So, like I said, Kintaro gets his big brother syndrome and decides to sneak after Noriko to kind of protect her the best he can. So Mr. Kagure and Noriko are at the horse races, and while Mr. Noriko is totally laying on the intimidation and like the wooing and stuff, Kintaro is actually there, like in the room with them, in like a giant stuffed horse.
Yeah, how nobody notices this is, it's one of those rule of animation thing. Excuse me. It is really funny because it's just this horse with these big eyes going just
Yeah.
like he's just waiting, and so Kagure, of course, being all slimy and that he's trying to use Noriko, like starts trying to unbutton her shirt, and again this pushes the suspension of disbelief, but Kintaro's just right there and buttons it back up. So he goes to put his hand down her shirt and it gets stuck. He goes to unzip her jeans, and Kintaro again just zips them right back up. And at some point he's like, oh, I've got to go for broke. And so he goes to grab Noriko and just kiss her. And Kintaro jumps in and takes this kiss instead. And again, such good facial animation, because he's just like, he doesn't even know what to do. Like, he's never been kissed this way before by anybody. And and then of course, because Noriko has been completely unaware of all of this happening around her, she's just like, I should go home. And and so of course he's super confused by all of this. He's just, what? Huh? And she's like, no, I need to go home. And because he's still, at least trying to pretend to be a gentleman, he does let her leave. Takes her home, and she goes upstairs and checks on Kintaro, and he's just this like white outline with two circles for eyes. And oh my god, this is probably the funniest line in the show. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, because what's leading up to this is because that kiss that Cactus was talking about just now, the way they animate this kiss totally lets you know how intense that it was, because Mr. Kagure's voice actor, as soon as he starts kissing Kentaro, he makes this noise that just right, and it gets like more and more intense, and then the camera starts shaking, and both of the characters' heads are vibrating back and forth so much that even the color cannot keep up with these motion lines of the characters, and then it cuts over, to a torpedo launching in the ocean and destroying like an aircraft carrier, and it's just this most intense kiss ever, right? And Kintaro faints. He just goes, oh, light out, and he just on the floor. And, a little bit later, Noriko is back at home and she's talking to Kintaro. She's like, I just don't know if I should really get in with this. I don't know if I should. I don't feel totally comfortable. And she's like, what do you think, Kentaro? And the camera pans over, and he's still recovering from this kiss. He is laying on the bed. He's like scribbled into the animation cell, and he's not even painted. He's just like this massive doodle, and he's like, I'm not quite feeling myself today, And yeah, let's see. I lost my notes here. So yeah, he's still recovering from this kiss, and he tries to talk her out of marriage, but he messes it up. And we've all been in that conversation where you're just trying to help your friend, and they kind of take it the wrong way, and you're like, well, no, that's not what I mean. But then when you say that, that gets taken the wrong way, and it just spirals out of control. So she gets upset and she leaves, and that's pretty much the last straw for Kentaro. So he goes, Kentaro, he goes to see Mr. Kagure, and they're like arguing over a bridge about Noriko's future, basically. And he's like, just like earlier, they're good people. She's a good person. Y'all need to quit. This is not right. And while they're going back and forth, with Kentaro saying that they're good people, and with Mr. Kagure saying that they're just idiots, and they deserve anything bad, and blah blah blah. Noriko shows up and she sees the whole thing, and it tears her apart.
and like Kintaro tries to cover for it, because Kagure's girlfriend is there, and he's like, oh, Noriko, fancy you being here. I wanted to introduce you to my girlfriend, who's also Noriko, and yeah, and it's super flimsy, and Noriko doesn't buy it for a single second.
Yeah, and the poor girl, she runs off. And that being said, Mr. Kagure is like, oh, I'm gonna kick your ass. You ruined my plans. And out of nowhere, Kentaro like pulls this knowledge from, I guess, a dojo that he's worked at before the show started, and he knocks the crap out of Mr. Kagure, and it's totally awesome. It's great. But then the camera pans over to Kentaro, and he's got like a shaky fist, and he's like, I just opened a can of whoop ass on him. My kendo teacher would be very disappointed.
Yeah, it's like any moment of like super duper badassery in this show is just like instantly, quote unquote, ruined by funny, and which is just fun.
Yeah, it's like ruined in the best way, really. But with that being said, that's kind of the end of Mr. Kagure, and it's the next day now, from all of that, and the owner is actually doing better now. He doesn't have to have his arm in a cast, so like enough time has passed that everything's great, and the noodles are back to the way they were, but now the regulars are like, hey, what happened to Kentaro's noodles? These taste like pasty old man noodles. I don't want to eat this. Where did Kintaro go?
Like, I think that guy just wanted to complain.
Yeah, he it's definitely, we've all seen that guy. He's only happy when he's miserable, you know. Um, I have got a story to tell you guys about pancakes at a later episode, but we'll get to that later. Um, so with that being said, Kintaro goes up to Noriko's room because not only is it a family-run restaurant, but they live like on the second floor. Y'all have seen how that works. And so he goes to Noriko's room and he wants to talk to her, kind of about how things have gone before he leaves. And, Noriko sees that Kentaro was trying to help her. And that being said, her affection starts to head in Kentaro's direction, And Kentaro, even though, Noriko is cute, she would be hard to pass up. But it's just, she has just gone through all that crap. And yeah, he's a pervy guy, but at the same time, he also has a heart. So he gracefully, redirects her affections. Because he's also protecting her from himself as well. Because he's just not right for her, and he knows that. But she just wants something. So, with that being said, Kentaro and the Noodle family, they go their separate ways, and it's kind of a bittersweet ending.
Yeah, this is one of those where you kind of get this sense of all of the places that he ends up throughout this series, that he could have been happy. There was a potential future for him at that noodle shop, that he could have taken over and, married Noriko and run the noodle shop, and and it wasn't in the cards, and it's not really in his personality, but it feels really bittersweet because it's the strongest sense of what could have been with this episode. So, yeah.
Right, and I do know that the manga of Golden Boy, it goes on much, much further than these 6 episodes, but I haven't read them, and I feel like I don't really need to, because by the end of these 6 episodes, for those who will watch the series, it feels like the story doesn't need to go further than those 6 episodes, but me personally, I would like to think that eventually Kentaro did go back to that noodle shop, because it's just such a good episode. But that being said, we're going to move on to episode 4.
Oh, episode 4.
Episode 4 is awesome. Now, here we are at the top of the hour, basically. So, for those who are just now tuning in, I do want to say thank you for tuning in. For those who have been listening, I'm sorry. But, yeah, for everybody, all of my listeners, I just want to say, thank you for tuning in to the Fox in the Box show. This is Fox Electronica with special guest Cactus Electronica. And yeah, look for more fun like this in the future. If you enjoyed this episode, there will be more. So stay tuned. But yeah, here we are. Episode 4 of Golden Boy. There's not really a lot to say about this episode, and it's a shame because it's so dense of an episode.
Yeah, it has arguably, like the third episode has the funniest line, but this one has the funniest scene. Because he basically it starts with the way a few of the other ones do, with he sees a hot lady and he's all like, "Who is that?" And it turns out she's kind of very athletically built, so he's like, "Oh, it's a wild beast, on the plains of the savannah," and it suddenly cuts to this savannah, safari vista behind her and everything, and turns out she just goes inside this building and he just follows her, which creepy, but he covers it. He covers for himself when she turns around at some point. He's like, "Do you want something?" Turns out it's a swimming pool, and they're looking for coaches right then. So he just, oh, I wanted a job as a coach, and so this is where the funniest scene in the entire show comes in, is that they go to test him. They're like, well, you're going to apply to be a swimming coach. Let's see how you swim. Um, he can't swim, and I don't want to spoil the whole scene, but it's just, yeah, suffice it to say that he can't swim at all.
Imagine a grown man, 25 years old, standing in front of an Olympic-sized swimming pool with with a whole crowd of people behind him, and he is going to show off his swimming skills, and never once has he ever gone swimming in his life. And so they blow the whistle. He jumps off of the little starting post that he's on, goes right into the water, and starts immediately drowning. And it's not even like, oh, well, that's the end of him. It's ridiculously funny. And just out of sheer determination of trying to get to the other end of the pool, he drowns horizontally across the pool. Like the whole time, he's like screaming and gasping for air and just, like sputtering, and there's like snot coming out of his nose, and he's crying and flailing. And at one point, he just sinks. And then he like pops back up, still screaming, and like with his face paddles himself across the pool.
Like, he's just trying to impress this lady, and he's failing miserably. But he still tries to cover for it, because he gets to the end, and like even the animation style changes when he's like, so, how do you like my swimming? And it just,
Yeah.
oh my god.
Yeah, it goes from like comedic artwork to like basically JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because he gets all like these serious lines and stuff, and he turns around and he's like, how do you like that? And, one of the staff members is like, you should be taking our classes and not actually teaching them.
And so by and by, he challenges the chief instructor to a race 1 month in the future, and he's like, hey, if you beat me, you can do anything you want to me. I'll do anything you say. But if I win, then you have to hire me as a coach. In the meantime, let me work here. I'll do anything you want, and you don't even have to pay me. So they put him in charge of like the youngest children of classes, because these are the kids that can't swim at all, where it's just getting them used to the water, teaching them, tying floaties to them and teaching them just to be in the water. So not actually any technique here involved. So, he's going around, and like it's a moment where, it turns out after he does this and she accepts the challenge, everybody's like, you know that she won a gold medal in the Olympics, right? And he just kind of melts into a puddle on the floor. He's like, oh, but he does it anyway. He tries, and then it's like, it turns out that like she had kind of, in her quest for excellence, had sort of forgotten what it was to have fun swimming. Because it's just like, there's a point where like one of the other instructors is saying, oh, well, if these kids, if they don't want to, or they're kind of scared, you can just like hold their head under the water for the required amount of time, and they'll be fine. It's just 10 seconds. And he's like, what? That no, that's horrible.
Right, because he's like, wouldn't they be afraid of the water as a result? And the instructor's like, yeah, but we were told that for kids who can't cut it, they're allowed to drop out. And it's like, oh my god, what's going on? You're gonna like just horrify these children. And so, while Kentaro is kind of doing his own thing with the kids, because he's making little games and he's letting them have fun, and he's kind of showing them that water is not something to be afraid of. Instead of being like, Russian swimming coach of just swim, and while things are kind of slow, the actual staff, they're all helping him actually learn how to swim in between. And so it's kind of cool. But that being said, it's been a little bit, and the the chief instructor, the Olympic swimmer, she goes, okay, look, your class isn't doing so great. We expect results here, so you need to kind of pep it up." And he's like, "Okay, absolutely." And at one point, she jumps into the pool in front of him, and she's like, "So, do you think you can keep up a little bit? Just kind of testing him to see where he's at, basically." And he's like, "Yes, yes, I can keep up." You know, so she starts just kind of doing average swimming, and he is off like an uncoordinated Dutch hound on a floor of butter, and he's just coming after her, and from his point of view and the camera, you get to see all you see is feet, legs, and butt, and crotch basically, and he's just like, "Oh my god, why are her legs all the way out like that? What? Huh?" And the whole time he's just like, that's his goal, not the other end of the pool, not to catch her, but like her whole area there. He's just like, that's where I need to be. And so he is so focused on that like the power of boner sends him shooting through the water. And the chief instructor, she's like, "Well, I'm just slowing my pace down to match his. He doesn't have a chance. This will be fine." Wham! And he plants face first into her butt. And she's like, "Oh my god, what?" And while he's there, he does like this weird sucking maneuver thing, and you just see like the bottom of her swimsuit like fold into her butt, and his cheeks get so big, and he stands straight up out of the water, and he's got this mouthful of everything, and he just gulps it down, and he's like, "Ha ha 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 ha."
Yeah, yeah, it's gross.
It's gross, but it's funny. And that being said, she's yelling at him all the more, and they get out of the pool, and then she happens to look down, and he is just 100% giving her a standing ovation of her swimming ability. And she's like, "That's gross. I can't even. I can't even."
So she punches him in the face, and the next thing is him just being thrown out the door with his bike and his clothes and everything. Just, nope, go away, get out.
Yeah, he's just like, there's just a pile of Kintaro there, and he's like, "Okay, okay, I guess I'll go." And so he leaves. And it kind of cuts over to a little bit of time later, and the kids that were learning how to swim, turns out that they're having a lot of fun now, and the results are coming back that the children are swimming better, the parents are happier, like everything's great. And the chief instructor, she's like, "How? What all changed?" And the coach tells her, she's like, "Yeah, we've been doing some of the practices that Kintaro came up with, and it's kind of turning a lot of the children around. A lot of people are liking the methods that he came up with." And that being said, she's like, "And also one of the parents wants to kind of thank you." So she goes up to the front, and one of the parents is there, of course, with one of the children of the swimming classes. And the parent was like, "Oh, she's so much happier. She takes to the water now. Everything's so great. Thank you for your swimming program." And chief instructor looks down at the child, and she goes, "Hey, are you having fun? Are you happy?" And the little girl goes, "Where's Coach Kintaro?" And at that moment, you know, the chief instructor, she just gets this idea, like it just dawns on her, of what's been going on. And she thinks about, her and her dad going swimming, and how he was such a kind spirit, and how fun it was, and how that ignited her, her passion to go swim. And now she's this Olympic swimmer, and now, she's got this swimming facility and all this, and it's all because of how nice her dad was. And so she's sitting at the office, the little pool office afterwards, and she's like, "He did it. He actually won. He beat me just like he said he would." And yeah, I kind of thought that was like really cool way of doing that, cuz she's just like, "I'm going to have to find him now." And you're gonna find out, like, here we are, the fourth episode. That's kind of the recurring theme through the whole thing of the women are like, I have to go find him.
Yeah, no, I think the other thing I put in my notes for this episode is like he's so dramatic. There's so many moments where he's just like, where he's begging and saying I'll do anything or whatever, and it's just ridiculously over the top dramatic. And it's just funny. It's hilarious.
Yes, definitely. So, with that being said, that's episode 4 of 6. And look at this, we're only an hour in. Isn't that great? Well, I guess because we've got like 2 episodes left, and so we're gonna have fun with this one. Let me tell you. So, episode 5. um, this requires a woman's perspective more than it does mine, because the way this goes, it kind of makes me blush and embarrassed, like, oh god, because oh yeah, I can sit and watch dirty movies all day. I can, have the dirtiest jokes with my friends and all that. But for some reason, this episode just makes me like, oh my.
Yeah, this is probably all of the other episodes are kind of a very strong PG-13.
This is rated R.
This one is the R-rated episode. It edges out of PG-13 entirely, and it is this is. It should of course go without saying, none of this anime is for children, but this is the least for children of all of them, because it gets it's not super explicit, but you know exactly what's going on at any given moment.
Right. So, yeah, we're just going to jump into this. So, episode 5 of Golden Boy. Kentaro finds himself in the mountains, passed by a motorcycle babe, and can only watch as she chugs a whole can of sake and then proceeds to ride her seat as she revs her motorcycle. And once she finally gets off, she like hits a wheelie and squeals out of there, and like he is frozen. He can't even say anything, but like his facial expression is so, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like, yeah, that's what a guy would feel if they were watching this happen.
Yeah, it's like that she does that in public is a little bit odd, but at the same time, people don't always notice things going on, so you know.
Yeah. So, spellbound by this, he starts to pedal after her until he ends up working at this like really high class, high society Japanese estate. Um, and while he's there, Kentaro likes looking at this really, really nice looking kimono beauty that kind of paralyzes him on sight. Guys, y'all have seen, y'all have known the girl that can do that to you, and that's not freaking fair. It's like, you don't even have to like even be friends, or heck, you might not have ever had a relationship, but it's like, oh shit, she's looking at me. Now what do I do?
Like that cuts both ways, because no, it happens to ladies too. Where there's that one guy, like I won't, but I can think of a couple of men out there that I don't actually want to meet them because I will not be able to speak.
But that being said, yeah, he gets paralyzed as soon as she stares at him, so he can't do anything right. And let's see, but yeah, he gets paralyzed, but he also gets like really strong discipline while he's there, to be proper, like, have your shoulders straight, or carry it this way, or do this, or do that, or, sweep in this kind of fashion, sort of thing. And then it happens. His fetish downfall of ever, I guess. His sexy kryptonite rears its ugly head, and he finds her toilet. He finds Kimono Babe's toilet. And yeah, so he starts like doing his fetish thing of just, oh, look at this ancient toilet that she must use, and oh man, this is where the beauty sits, and oh my god,
And then he gets caught.
Yep, and he gets caught by Reiko, which is the kimono lady. That's her name, Reiko. Now, he's promptly fired after that. But after noting this in his notebook, he starts camping out in the woods just right outside the compound, basically, or the estate. And he spends 28 days in the woods. And all he's doing day in, day out is like he's cooking a little bit and he's kind of doing maintenance on his bike and just staring at the front door for 28 days. And he's like, I know something's going to happen. I just know it. I'm going to wait. I'm going to find something. Something's going to happen and it's going to be exciting. And on the 28th day, he's like, maybe not. And so as he starts to give up, he sees Reiko right outside the front door just before dawn getting into a taxi. And yeah, she just books it out of there to like this weird secluded factory. So he's like, holy crap, this is it. This is the moment I've been waiting for. I have to go see what happens. So he hops onto his bike and he pedals his heart out to this old broken down factory. And while he sneaks in, there's like a door that's open, and he peers in just in time to see Reiko like stripped down to nothing but like a G-string and start to get off on her bike. And he's just like, oh my god, it's her! It's the mountain lady! Oh, they're both the same person! And he's just freaking out. But, like, he can't look away either.
And then she sees him.
Right, and he's caught, because he's being a voyeur. He's being naughty, And so while she has basically nothing on, she's like super calm the whole time. She's like, oh, look at you, a man. How about that? Well, you know what? This here's my motorcycle. It's better than any man. It's better than you. I bet you don't measure up. No man can measure up to this motorcycle. This is the best motorcycle ever.
Like, and as she's doing this whole monologue, like, she's still, like, revving the bike and then, like, turning over on her back and, like, touching on herself and everything.
Yeah, and he's just like, okay, all right. No, I can't compare. What? And as that's going on, yeah, she lets him know that the engine, gets her hotter than a Texas heat wave, basically. And so then, out of nowhere, she challenges Kentaro. She's like, do you think you're better than my motorcycle? And he's like, I don't know. And so it kind of does like the smash cut to them outside on the mountain trail, or basically a mountain trail, because there's pavement. But they're kind of like, they're about to race, and he's on a bicycle. Like, I think it's just a 5-speed bike at that, because it's the Mikazuki 5. But she's on the, like, this like super crotch rocket of a motorcycle, like, it is souped up. And there's no way,
Yeah, this episode puts this bicycle into like into the upper echelons of anime vehicles. Because oh my god, this is so funny.
Yeah, there's that red electric bike from Akira. There's the Vespa 180 SS from Fulikuli. There's the Mikazuki 5.
Yeah, this is right up there.
Oh, and the Mach 5.
Oh yeah, the Mach 5, of course. But yeah, so they start racing, and of course, because, physics and she's on a motorcycle, she just beats him by a whole bunch. But he literally by hook occasionally just keeps keeping up with her. you know, there's a point where he realizes that she's just way too far ahead of him. Like, she's already into this tunnel, and there's a guy in a Porsche in front of her, and she's just like, ugh, because he needs to get out of my way, kind of a thing. And Kentaro, meanwhile, is way back up the hill, but he sees this like drainage slope that's almost vertical, and he's just like, and then he goes for it. He just goes straight down almost. And during this, it's like this moment of his brain kind of short circuits, because all he can say is study, 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 just over and over again. And he's just pedaling like as fast as he can. If any of you remember being, riding a bike or ride a bike now, you know how when you're going down a steep enough hill, the pedals are kind of going on their own and your feet are just trying to keep up. It's kind of like that. And so she gets, as this is going on, she gets around the Porsche, and he hooks the back of the Porsche, and so, because the guy in the Porsche is like, hey, you cut me off, and so he starts chasing after her on the bike, and so Kentaro is hooked onto the back of the Porsche, just holding on for dear life onto this rope, and so it's like you see her face looking all determined, and the guy in the Porsche like, I'm gonna get you, and it cuts to Kentaro just screaming as this Porsche drags him along.
Yeah, he's like, all he could do is either scream incoherently or scream the word study over and over and over. And there's like tears flowing out of his eyes. Like he is just, his brain has shut down. He is so terrified, but he's so determined at the same time that he just can't. He cannot stop now. And yeah, he's got like this little rope with like a hook, kind of like a little grappling hook, and he calls it his Kentaro rope, And so out of just pure inertia, he starts gaining a little bit on both of them, and they hit a turn. And Kentaro cannot turn in the Mikazuki 5, especially at this speed. So he ends up just rocketing straight off the cliff, but kind of in an upward arc because of how fast he's going. And he ends up landing like dead center of these power lines that are like right next to the road. And he is just screaming and out of his mind, and he's going perfectly right along these power lines. And the sun starts to like come up or come out from behind these clouds or whatever, and the camera is on Reiko as she is just blazing through this mountain trail, and all of a sudden this huge shadow of Kentaro riding his bike is just completely over her, and she's like, what the hell?
Because at this point, she figures that she has left him far in the dust, and no, that he's just up on the power lines, and so he's riding, and this is another of those shots that I think I'd seen in other things before, like other amalgamations of clips of anime, because I think at least for the late 90s and early 2000s was a pretty iconic anime shot of like him just on the power lines with the sunset behind him, just madly pedaling, on this bike. And so he ends up like neck and neck with her, and they start going down this hill, and there's an unfinished bridge basically, and it's this huge gap, and she's like, oh, is he gonna jump the ravine? And they're just, because at some point they're going down this hill, and she realizes he's going too fast to actually make the turn at the bottom. So she's like, oh, are you gonna jump the ravine? And he just keeps going, because he's beyond speaking, he's just pedaling.
Yeah, and when he launches off, it's kind of an E.T. moment.
And and everybody, like, just the whole anime has at this point like primed everybody to think that he's going to make it. He doesn't, and that's even funnier. She does that whole like Akira slide on the bike, comes to this screeching halt, and is like, "Oh, he won! He's captured my heart." Basically saying that she would sleep with him, except that now he's dead because he just fell however far it was into this ravine, and at that point you hear just and this crash, and he comes out of the woods and is just still pedaling because he's completely forgotten about her at this point.
Yeah, he is not on planet Earth. All his mind is just shut down. He's only the only thing he can concentrate on is going. You know, and yeah, it's just like she said. You just like that, and he pops out of the trees, and like there's branches and stuff hanging off of him, and he's just like study, 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 and he just keeps going. Like he doesn't slow down. He's just gone. And she's watching like this little, pepper speck of Kentaro just disappear over the horizon, and she's like, "He did it. He actually survived. Oh hell no! I gotta catch up to him. I'm getting laid by this guy."
Yeah, she's like, "No, come claim your prize."
Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Oh my god, come claim me!" And that's kind of the end of the episode.
and, and so it's just I think it's funny because where like it seems like it could be problematic, but at least from my perspective it isn't, because it's not, it's kind of unusual. I'm not into motorcycles like that, but she is, and she kind of owns it. So she's not hurting anybody with it, so it's like, hey, cool. But yeah, this is one of those where it is the most risque of the episodes, but it's just fun. And yeah, I think it might have some of the most iconic shots in the anime. But
just maybe, because Reiko's design, you almost see her more than you see Kentaro as far as like promotional artwork. Um, all you got to do is just do a Google search. You'll see her. She's got long black hair and like a motorcycle racing suit. That's her. She's everywhere. So I don't know if they thought this was going to be the last episode and they just did it, or they just. I honestly don't know.
Maybe it was their favorite episode.
It might have been, because even the episode's title is called Balls to the Wall, and that's pretty much what this episode was. Like this is the highest, in like the action and the action comedy that the show got, you know. And this next episode, episode 6, it's called Animation is Fun, and it's the last episode, and it's a lot um, it's a lot more toned down, as far as like the madcap action of that whole last race. But it's still really good in its own way. Like it goes back to like situational comedy instead of just bizarre craziness.
But it also ties like all of the other episodes together into like a single package, which is a lot of fun.
Right, and that's why I say it feels like it doesn't need to go past the 6th episode. But with all of that, let's go ahead and start episode 6 after I drop this little bit of nugget here for you. Um, Again, I do want to say thank you for listening to All Fur Radio. It's the only place that you can catch the Fox in the Box show with me, Foxy Electronica. And this is the next to the last episode of February's Month Alert. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. It's been cool. I started out the month with a special guest. Last week I kind of helmed the whole thing myself. This week I've got a special guest. Who knows what's going to happen next week? But the only way to find out is to tune in. So what's going to be the final nail in the coffin of the month Alert? Heck, if I know, I'm not going to tell you. You're just going to have to, tune in and find out. But now that we've dropped the radio station ID, let's get on to the very final episode of Goldenboy. Episode 6, Animation is Fun. So, I've got a lot to say here.
I think the first note that I put on this episode is that I'm pretty sure that it's full of in jokes. Um, because it just, any time it seems like you have either a movie or a cartoon or anything that deals with the process of making that kind of media, it tends to be full of in jokes.
Yeah, very much so. And you're gonna see what we're talking about here in just a moment, but check this out. So the episode opens up with Kentaro in an animation studio negotiating a job. Because he's gotta work, we all gotta work. While he's negotiating, a coworker named Chi shows up and kind of catches his attention because she's a hottie patati. And while that's going on, the boss is still not kind of convinced that he wants to hire Kentaro because he wanted a guy with a car, not a bike. You know, I'm pretty sure you know the difference between a bike and a car. A car has an engine and four wheels, and a bicycle is a bicycle. It has pedals and two wheels. Not quite the same thing.
And she actually does a really sweet thing here where she kind of covers for him. And she's like, saying to her boss, well, you know how often people actually answer our ads, kind of indirectly telling him, hire this guy. And, because then the boss is just like, but then hires Kentaro.
Right, because once she kind of has her little, it's like this weird kill him with kindness thing, because she doesn't really make a stand. She's just like, oh, you know how hard it is to get people to work here. Come on, let me show you the animation studio, Kentaro. And so that's exactly what happens. She shows him the little animation area, and Kentaro is so eager to meet these animators that he jumps out and he's like, "It's so nice to meet you." And the camera pans over, and all of the animators are just dead asleep. And he's kind of like, "Oh, okay." And he looks up at the clock, and it's just past 3, and he goes, I guess mornings in animation studios begin a little late." And then it cuts over, to the opening credits of the episode. And yeah, so after the opening credits, we catch up with Kentaro, and he is an arts production administrator, which sounds like it's really really cool, but it's really not. Basically, he picks things up and takes them where they need to go. So he's a delivery boy, you know. Delivery boy is almost exclusively for animation cells. And when he's not doing that, he's doing odd jobs here and there, kind of around the office to just kind of help. But along with making extensive anime, pardon me, along with making extensive notes on chi, he also learns a lot about anime, and he kind of jokes around and kind of does like a camaraderie with the animators. And that leads to a very interesting scene I'm not going to talk about because, like I said, even though we're kind of spoiling the show, we're not going to spoil all the jokes. So you got to check out how he kind of bonds with one of the animators. And but that being said, just about that time, the original artist of the production that they're doing and his assistant, they appear, and the assistant starts to harass the entire animation team. Now, yeah, it's just kind of a rough thing. The only way that I can explain it is like she's just like bitchy, and there's really no need for that kind of thing. But that being said, with everyone kind of on edge a little bit from that, Kentaro's job gets a little bit harsher. Running errands, getting, orders for food, and, just trying to get all of that in order. It's getting a lot more stressful now because they're getting closer to the deadline. But he decides, you know what? I'm just going to help out. I'm going to do something really great for these guys because they're all just eating like takeout food and instant food, and that's just not healthy. So he decides that he's going to cook for the staff, just to make morale go up a little bit. Until he notices Chi is fresh out of the potty. Now, I don't know if you listeners can guess where we're going next with the episode, but
Let's just cut to the end. He gets caught.
yeah, he gets caught. And he gets caught by the boss of all things. And the harsh or the crazy thing about this one is that while he was like chopping up the vegetables and cooking for everybody, he's still holding that knife. So when the boss catches him, he turns around like, "Whoa!"
It's like that shot of just a few strands of hair falling down in front of the boss's face that he very nearly took out an eye
Yeah,
during doing that.
yeah, like he straight up nearly slashed the boss in two with all that. And so the boss doesn't really like that, and he gets beat up. And so he's just like, okay, that's educational.
Life is very educational.
Yeah, life is very educational. He learned a lesson there, but really he didn't. I doubt that he did. And so then he's like, okay, well, that was kind of a bust. So I'm going to go and clean around the office. And he goes to this one animator's desk. And it's so funny because it cuts to a real life animator's desk. And I did a little bit of reading up on this through over the years. But apparently what was going on is one of the main animators who was working on the show apparently just had the worst desk that anyone had ever seen. Like, nobody could figure out how this guy got his job done. But he was the lead animator, so no one really questioned it. So they thought it would be funny if instead of just drawing a really messy desk, they just like took a photograph and kind of like superimposed it into the animation.
And like, I mean, I've been known to have a messy desk in my time, cluttered and stuff. But like, this had just like banana peels and like it just had straight up garbage on it, and it was just like, oh, it was gross. So yeah, Kentaro just makes it pristine, and this guy shows up and is like, "Did you clean up my desk?" And he's like, yes, and he just never do that again. I don't know where anything is now.
Yeah, and he proceeds to like knock Kentaro straight into the trash. Like he just like I guess really sucker punches him, just wham, and he's like, "Don't ever do that again." And he's just like, "Oh my god, I'm being beat up way too much."
He's learning a lot of lessons.
A lot of lessons. So with that happening, the assistant just bitches right on in again and starts flailing about, the production deadline and all this and that. And while she's going off, Chi decides that she's going to try to like kind of de-escalate the situation and start bringing in tea for everybody. But the problem with that is that, while while the assistant is going nuts and, flailing around and all that, um, yeah, she accidentally knocks the tea out of Chi's hand and gets it spilled like all over her chest. And within like milliseconds, basically, Kentaro gets up and he's like, "I will solve this problem," because he was just so focused on getting everything like fixed that he like grabs this rag and he's like harshly like just rubbing it across her boobs trying to get everything fixed. And like I said, this is like all in a span of milliseconds. Pardon me. And once the assistant realizes what's going on, she like wallops him as hard as he can. And I even did like a freeze frame for the viewing before we started this review, and he gets twisted all the way around with like the goofiest facial expressions.
Yeah, if you go to check this out, if you can watch this scene in frame by frame animation, it is well worth it because it's so funny. Because he's just, it's a very quick movement in the show itself. He just whirls around, but each facial expression on the individual frames is just super distorted, but also really funny.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's totally worth checking out. So, that being said, after Kentaro gets walloped to the ground, the staff gets yelled at for, how crappy they are and how they better meet the deadline and all that. And the assistant leaves, and the boss literally just like starts screaming because it's just so much. It's so much to handle. And he composes himself and he tries to rally the team together, and he's like, I know this is going to be hard, but we're behind the deadline, but we can do it. We're a really good team. This is fantastic. And Kentaro just butts in and he's like, hey, I just got a call, and the director got hit by a car and is in the hospital.
Because, yeah, like, while he's doing his speech, you see the phone ring, and Kentaro just goes and answers it. And it's like, you don't hear what he says, but he just, he's like, thank you, and hangs up. It's like, so the director's in the hospital.
And it's just kind of, more crap piled on crap, and it's ridiculously stressful at this point. And so with that being said, like the team is struggling, and like Kentaro is trying to cheer up Chi, and she's having a moment because all she's doing is, like messing with the bubbles underneath the cells, trying to pop them so nothing comes up in the animation frames. But like she also paints the cells too, and she's like, look, I've just got this crap job. I'm nobody. I don't know why anybody would be worried about me doing a good job.
And, like, this is a bit of an aside, but what this actually made me think about is this is a thing from, like, animation history. Because in anime, I'm assuming, as well as, for sure I knew, like, with Disney animation, you had multiple departments, and this episode actually does a good job of breaking down the different departments in an animation studio, at least for traditional animation. And, they're talking about this and how, once everything gets kind of drawn and printed onto the cells, then it goes to ink and paint. And, so ink and paint were the people that actually hand painted the animation cells back in the day, which were then photographed onto film. And the ink and paint department used to be kind of regarded as just pure grunt work, that it didn't require a lot of creativity or, and I can sort of see where they came from with that, in that it is, you've got the color scheme all laid out, where everything's supposed to be, and at the same time, it is a difficult job, because if if the cells aren't painted correctly, then you don't have a movie without the ink and paint department. So, when she kind of gives this little monologue about, well, nobody cares about my job, nobody cares that I meet my deadlines, I'm just ink and paint, it kind of made me think a little bit about that and how that's historically kind of been a thing with animation. So, a little fun fact, but anyway.
I mean, hey, animation is fun, right? So, yeah, watching her kind of get sad and him trying to cheer her up, and watching the team, the whole animation team, just generally get more and more discouraged. Like they don't know how they're going to meet these deadlines. They don't know how to, you know, get this production done without everything just going to pot.
Like the animators are just playing Pac-Man because they don't care anymore. They've given up.
Yeah, they're like, there's nothing we could do. We're done. Maybe they're still hiring at Speed Racer. I don't know. Which I think is a hilarious joke because that animation stopped about 30 years prior to this getting animated, but whatever. But then, out of nowhere, Kentaro, he gets this idea. He's like, wait a minute. This is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. I know exactly what to do. And before I tell you people what he does, I do want to go ahead and tell you guys that y'all need to listen later on tonight at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, of course, to this neat little show called Adrenaline Rush. And It's just kind of ironic that about what I'm about to say is linking into Adrenaline Rush. It's a lot like Sheba's show. It's a lot of good music, and guys, I'm telling you, you got to check it out. It's totally worth the listen, especially if you like music with a bit higher of a tempo and not, you know, country music. But going back to Golden Boy, Kentaro suddenly remembers all the women from the past few episodes, and he's like, I know what to do.
Because what kicks this whole thing off is he's like, well, couldn't we use like some kind of computers for this? And so they're like, well, no, CG is super expensive and difficult, and we don't even know anybody. And that's when he, the light bulb kind of goes off for him, and he's like, but I know somebody. So he just picks up the phone, and while they're all looking at him kind of like with this "who even are you" expression on their faces, he's calling the ladies from the first episode, going, "Hey, it's Kentaro." And I'm like, "Hey, we were looking for you." He's like, "Yeah, could you maybe help us out with a program for this?" And so that takes care of one side of the animation, and you know then their voice actress quits, and he's like, "Hey, wait a second!" And so he calls the high school girl from the second episode and her friend.
Right, and his literal line was, I know a girl that's good at faking things, you know?
And so, they come in and they're like, "Hey, this will be great." And in the meantime, he's like running shots back and forth to the hospital to clear things with the director. And then it suddenly, there's the girl from the noodle shop, just like, "Hi, I'm here to make sure that nobody starves." And one of the notes that he puts in his notebook is like, "Animators really like girls like the girl from the noodle shop."
Yeah, because she's like, I've got lovely udon. Does anybody want to try my noodles or whatever? And all the animators at once, they're like, yeah. And which is just, it's such a nerd thing, but it's so funny. And he even gets a hold of the chief instructor from the swimming pool because the production that they're doing is called The Valley Where the Oni Screams. And there is a section where this giant Oni, which is just a big ogre guy for those who don't know, he's like swimming through the ocean. Like, think of Godzilla, but just a big man, you know? And so he calls up the Olympic swimmer and he's like, do you have any footage of you? And she's like, well, I can shoot footage of me, would that be fine? And he's like, yes, that's great. And so, that's how they get the reference sheet for that. And yeah, he got a hold of Naoko for the voices. And the boss is like, oh my god, this golden boy, he's our only hope to get this production. And he's like, but we need to get these final reels off so we can get them prepped for the show. And he's like,
they gotta get there fast.
Yeah, and he's like, but they gotta get there fast. Can you do it, Kentaro? And he's like, no, but there is another. And he comes barreling out of the animation studio and does like this weird underhanded discus frisbee throw. And Reiko, the motorcycle babe, catches it and she's like, I'm on it. And just blitzes off to get these things into final editing. And it's just this really cool, I don't know, probably like 3 minute or so montage of just all these girls coming in to help.
Just the whole series comes together right now. And like they're screening then that it cuts to them like screening this anime. And Kentaro is sitting there watching this, and he sees the director kind of looking very nervous, kind of face palming, and he sees Chi taking notes, and he's just like, oh no, we failed. Oh, they hate it. And and then it ends, and everybody's kind of nervous. They're not sure what's going on, and then all of the ladies that have been helping all start clapping because they loved it. And it's like, yay, everything is saved and it's great. And then Kentaro is gone.
Right, and before anyone notices that he's gone, like, the main person they needed to impress, of course, was the original artist, and he's just like flipping out. He's like, yes, yes, like he's like super pumped for it, and he's like, oh my god, this was amazing. If it was a woman, I'd marry it and call it Susie, And it's like it's so goofy, but it's great. But yeah, then they realize that Kentaro's not there, and because he flipped out and thought that it was going to be awful, and he's just like, I got to get out of here. So when all of the women see that he's gone, they all just stand up like, he's gone again. Oh my god, not again, not this time, and they all just like blast out of the theater, just toppling over each other, and they're just even I think it's Naoko. She's like, he's not leaving me a virgin, and all this and that, and the boss is just like watching all of these women just kind of shove themselves through this tiny doorway, and he's like, huh, you know, and he looks down at Chi and he goes, well, are you gonna go after him too? Are you gonna go? And she's like, yeah, but I need to finish my job first. Which I think is really cool because now she's got confidence in her own skill. And so, yeah, she works on the film and, finishes up the last little bit that they need to. And the film is going to come out and everything's going to be great. And the last thing we see is all of the ladies pardon me, piled into the boss lady's Porsche from the first episode.
Except for like the swimmer who's on the girl's bike.
Yeah, Reiko and the Olympic swimmer, they're on her bike, and they're literally yelling back and forth between the two vehicles, and they've got like this giant unfolded map of like Japan, and they're trying to track Kentaro's movements, and so the camera starts to pan out, and we get to see Kentaro, and they're like, "This is Kentaro OA, age 25. He dropped out of law school, just before graduation, and decided to learn from life. And who knows, Kentaro himself may go on to save Japan, or even the world, or not." And that's it. That's how Golden Boy ends.
And so, yeah, it's such a fun show. And, overall, Kintaro is absolutely a Mary Sue. And, though weirdly, I don't think he's a self-insert, because the self-insert is actually the manga creator from the sixth episode. So, of course, they make him just, like, he has perfect teeth and perfect hair, and, and he's cool, and like you get this sense that Kintaro's not cool, but he just manages to be better at everything, and everybody loves him wherever he goes. Eventually, that's like, not at first, but yeah, it just, as I don't know what else to even say is that I haven't already said. It's a really, really good show and absolutely worth checking out. And what did we say? We found it for what, like $17, $18 on Amazon?
Right, like just before we started doing this review, I was like thinking, because I spent 35 in tax for just the sixth episode on VHS. And that's kind of a lot, guys. And a handful of years ago, I found the entire series, all 6 episodes, for $20. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm picking this up. And I've had it ever since. And so, for people out there who are kind of tired of the cookie cutter anime, that you see nowadays, where everyone's a teenager, everyone's in high school, and everyone has pink hair, um, go ahead and hunt down Golden Boy, because for $20 you really can't complain for the price.
That, and every now and then we still see like Kintaro cosplayers at conventions. It's really rare. There's usually only maybe one, but they show up and it's always like, hey, it's that guy. Because yeah, it's one of those, like, not every anime that came out that was released over here in the late 90s and early 2000s is worth checking out. Because there was, even in Japan in the late 90s, they were just throwing money at any project because there was this huge economic boom at the time. But, and then when anime started getting popular over here, through kind of the early 2000s, it was a similar thing where there was just, license everything.
Right.
So, a lot of what came over here is garbage, and there's no reason to pretend that it isn't. But this show is just such a hidden gem. It is so much fun, and it's like, yes, it's an older show, but that makes it an inexpensive purchase, and it's fun to watch.
Right, and this is one of those rare instances where I will tell other anime fans, and I'll defend this to my dying breath, that not every anime that has been dubbed is good. I mean, that still happens today, but oh my god, back then a lot of the voice acting was horrendous.
Yeah,
But
dubs were so hit or miss.
oh yeah, but this one, oh no, you want this one in English, my friend.
Yeah, this is, and I don't say this lightly. This is up there with like the Trigun and the Cowboy Bebop dub. It's a show that works really well in English, and like I was saying way back earlier, it's really kind of surprising that the voice actor who plays Kintaro didn't do another lead role, because he just kills it. Because the show really focuses on him, and he carries it so well. Like, every line is perfect.
Yeah, and he even throws in like ad lib lines that are totally not, even in the Japanese at all. And it's such an anomaly because when they do stuff like that, it inevitably turns into just some hot garbage. But this, oh no, this guy, everything was perfect about this show, and for $20, you definitely got to go pick it up. But that being said, we're gonna be closing the show out here, so I just want to go ahead and say I want to thank everybody who is listening to the show today. It's been really good. In case you forgot my name, how dare you? But my name is Foxy Electronica. This is Cactus Electronica.
Yeah.
See, there she is. And this has been yet another episode of Fox in the Box here on All Fur Radio. Now, I do say again that you can find me on Facebook, on Discord, both under the name of Fox Electronica, and generally hanging out on the All Fur Radio pages. Uh, I encourage you, come in, say hi, find me, hunt me down the best you can. And who knows, if you're the person who has the correct answer to the trivia for this week, all the power to you. I wish you the luck in getting that in because, man, it's going to be good this time. Other than that, I just want to say everybody really needs to be good to each other out there. Everybody's got to be great because at the end of the day, if we're not nice to each other, we're not going to have anything because in the end, all we have is each other. And that's kind of my closing statement for the show. Do you have anything to add?
Just, kind of echoing it. Be good to each other. Everyone love everybody. And, yep, signing off.
Yep. So, yeah, that's pretty much going to be the end of the show. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you've somehow lost the connection of how Golden Boy ties into the Mont Allure, part of it you could say is the whole protective big brother thing from, episode 3. Another thing that you could say is just lust and horniness. That there's a bit of that in love. There is. I mean, come on, come on. But other than that, yeah, that's pretty much how that ties in. Now, if you're wondering what I'm covering next week, too bad. You're going to have to tune in and find out. But I certainly hope to see you guys there. And once again, this is Fox Electronica signing out. You guys, take care.